You're not in shot, are you? It's Friday, it's 3 o'clock, and it's Together Unlocked, brought to you today from East London and the West Midlands by Together 2012. I'm Jude Gosling. I'm an artist and artistic director of Together 2012. With me in my studio in East London is our chair, the artist Julie Newman. Before we do some audio description and explain why we're dressed up to go out to stay in, over to you in the West Midlands for some introductions.
Okay, hi, I'm Robin Surgeoner, business director at Together 2012, also an artist in my own right under the name of Angry Fish. And yeah, we are up in Sutton Coldfield.
And I'm Josh Surgeoner, also in the Sutton Coldfield office, and I am a uni student primarily and a host of Together TV.
And we're all in isolation. So if you're in isolation as well, we'll be bringing this to you for the duration and probably then some. Um, I'm an artist, as I was saying. I also have a silly name, which is Jew90. So we have Jew90 Angry Fish. And I believe that Josh has often been foolish enough to call himself Josh the Surgeonator, but Julie has not. So, as it's a Friday, we dress up to go out to stay in, and we encourage you to send us your photos or videos of you doing the same. We haven't had any for a couple of weeks. So, mind you, of course, we weren't on air last Friday because it was a bank holiday. So do join us. The idea is that you dress up to go out to stay in, and it could be to do something you would usually do if it weren't for lockdown, or it could be something you'd love to do but never could do because you can't afford it or access it. Or it could just be entirely imaginary, like a journey to outer space or bottom of the sea. So I have usually short red headed hair, although obviously not quite as short as it was a few weeks ago. And today I am wearing a baseball cap, which is navy blue with a kind of beigey cap and lettering that says Roaring Forties, because I am dressed up to go out to go sailing. This hat was kind of wittier when I was actually in my 40s and roaring away. And now I'm in my late 50s. It does not seem quite so funny, but it's been good to bring it out again. And I also have my life jacket on, which I think in these times is quite a good look anyway. It's a kind of patchwork of fluorescent but faded pink, yellow, and blue with black strapping. and I have my wrists in braces. And as my little bit of extra, I have my assistant's dogs. So this is my assistant dog's life jacket, and yes, they really do wear them and come sailing. But it has been quite a long time since we went sailing. We're not a sporty household like the Surgeoners, who think they're the most competitive in the world.
We
But
don't think.
You know,
but here in London, we do enjoy some inner city sailing with some accessible boats. And one day I hope that will be possible again. So, Julie, you always have a kind of limited wardrobe on the grounds that when you packed to move into the studio at the beginning of lockdown, you weren't anticipating it being quite as difficult as this, and also brought mostly cameras and art materials. So, describe yourself and what you're dressed up to do.
Certainly, just as an aside, there's three of us here. Little Ned Norwich Teddy is sporting a medal. Yay! The gold medal. Yay! As a result of winning this week's challenge.
Yeah, it was a fix. We watched the video.
So, for anybody who's watching this show for the first time and is absolutely mystified, as well, you might be, on a Wednesday, we have virtual sport with the Paralympics, where we race London 2012 against Birmingham 2022. Clockwork toys for, in our case, my plastic gold medal, which I got from the mayor in 2012. And in the Surgeon household's case, just a whole host of medals. But yes, our teddy bear, because we're also taking part in the International Virtual Bear Hunt, our teddy bear has the medal this week.
Now, I'm Julie. As Ju said, I'm the chair. I have lovely silver and gold hair, dark rimmed glasses, and currently, in real time, I'm actually wearing a dark polo shirt. But in virtual reality, I have a feather boa, I have glitter on my face, I have one of those lovely luminescent bright yellow t shirts with all sorts of lovely attachments to it, like zigzags and things like that. And I'm wearing a little party hat. Why am I dressed like that? I hear you ask. It's because I'm going to a Eurovision party tonight. Well, and tomorrow it's going to be a Eurovision weekend. We'll talk about what's available later on in the show, but I do like a good Eurovision party. And given that the Bulgarian folk next door in the multi occupancy household also like a Eurovision party, I thought we could share.
Yes, it would be nice not to just be listening to kind of the riotous European music, wouldn't it? So, yes, I'd completely forgotten about that. I could indeed have found you a few boas and glittery things. So, next week there'll be no more virtual outfits. So, what are you dressed up to go out to stay in to do, Robin and Josh?
well, I am wearing a lovely kind of double-breasted jacket that wouldn't be out of place in a kind of 1980s St James's Park spy meeting, which I brought about 10 years ago. And as with many fancy coats, it's more kind of fashion over function, because when you sit down, you can't actually move your arms very much. So it makes it quite difficult to push. So I don't get to wear it very often. So a nice stationary web live stream is the perfect opportunity, because I don't actually have to move anywhere in my nice fancy coat.
Is this
You
the women's equivalent to the wheelchair users, where we just wear shoes that you could never walk in? I mean, we missed our virtual artist in residence this week, Penny Pepper, but if you're watching, Penny, I think you've got the best choice of shoes that I've
Yeah.
ever seen, but I cannot understand how anybody who can walk could walk in them.
Yeah, I'm often very impressed with some of my friends and the kind of heels and things they wear on nights out. Because I can't walk in flat shoes, so seeing what they can walk in is always impressive.
However, I need to point out that you're a really rubbish spy because you've just told everybody who you are.
No, I'm just that good that I don't care who knows.
Oh, right, okay.
It's the James Bond style of just walk in. Hi,
Is
I'm
there
James
anything you
Bond.
want to audio describe about his hairstyle or anything from a James Bond perspective?
It's just kind of far too long and in the way. So I keep having to do a kind of Justin Bieber hair flick to be able to actually see the camera.
It hides your eyes, Josh.
Yeah,
It's part of your spy thing.
yeah. I'll have to sweep it the other way and see if I can just look at the girl from the ring. But what you? What are you dressed as today?
I am dressed as a tourist. I can't believe I actually own a shirt of this color. I think it was one of those things that I ordered on Wish, and I should have put a bra size in rather than a t-shirt size.
Could you describe
that's
it, Ruben?
sorry.
Can we have some audio description first?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am sporting my ever so best tourist Legoland red baseball cap, a pair of very dark polarized sunglasses. I know they're polarized because when I look at this other screen we've got here, I can see nothing because obviously the lines are going however the polarization works. So my second screen is of no use to me whatsoever at the moment. I have very kind of touristy, don't care, grey locks hanging out around the side of the hat. And then I'm got a camera around my neck like all good tourists will have, ever so slightly shorter than it should be. And yes, a emerald, perhaps dark emerald green polo shirt with red inside of the collar and red cuffs, if you'd call it that,
If
round.
anybody saw the Sewing Bee challenge, was it BBC One last night? They were actually making a rugby shirt, but it seemed to be a very similar construction, and there was lots of talks of things, strange things like plackets. And I thought, am I sitting here utterly fascinated because of lockdown, or because I'm now in my late 50s? Or could there be anything particularly fascinating about how you pin two pieces of fabric together around a collar? And I thought it was probably a combination of lockdown and age.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Josh has been watching the Sewing Bee as well.
Well, only because Mum watches it, and I have to. If I watch the Sewing Bee for an hour, I can then kind of parlay that into playing Xbox for an hour. So
No, I don't want any excuses. It's just like when Bake Off became the biggest hit for young audiences. Older people like to hear that, Josh. We like to hear it. So no, clearly it was because it's cool and nothing to do with age.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you've got red plackets.
Oh right, okay, yeah, and as I said, I ordered this from a well-known Far East Asian company, where sizing is questionable, and so yes, it is rather revealing of my body, shall we say? I was going, yeah, it's just that it's body that's not as slim as it should be.
I always remember seeing Lenny Henry doing something. I think it was for Comic Relief, and he'd lost all that weight, and he was so proud. And he went over to Africa, and his nickname was Fat Man, and he couldn't believe it. So yeah, yes, I think there's a whole issue around sizing, but I'm one of those people who's shrinking in lockdown. So I'm the last person to talk, except to say that if you've grown out of anything and you're quite skinny to start with, think of me. So tourism has been very confusing this week, hasn't it? Because you've got the English government saying, "Oh yes, you can travel to take exercise," which is very often being a tourist, and then you've got the Scottish and the Welsh saying, "If you come over here to take exercise as a tourist, we're going to prosecute you." And it was pointed out, I think, in the paper that it's the very first time in centuries that we've got situations where there's, effectively a border, a real border between the countries of the Union.
See that 3 years of Brexit negotiations, and all it took was a pandemic.
Yes, and I understand actually they finally admitted very quietly this week that yes, there will be physical checks in the North Sea and port checks in Belfast, but I think just sticking to the tourism, if you're I should stress that our message is very much it is very, very infectious out there still. There are something like 10,000 new cases. Stay home, stay creative is the best way to stay well. But if you are intending to drive somewhere, please be careful. Just because the government say you can drive any length of time to take exercise, that's not really good British common sense, and it's certainly not what the tourist areas want. I understand Blackpool and the Lake District and so on have got campaigns going, please don't visit. And the Visit
Yeah.
Blackpool office has become the Don't Visit Blackpool office. It's much easier to do a virtual tour. And I imagine, because we're going to come on later to something for the weekend, but these days between Google Street View and so many places going online and having webcams and so on, it must be possible to do quite a lot of virtual tourism if you've got time on your hands in lockdown. Has anyone tried it?
I haven't tried it during lockdown, but um, a kind of good just Google Street View wander. If you're a little bit bored, or you'll do it too if you want to check out the access to somewhere, and you go somewhere, then you just kind of end up wandering around the local street, and oh, that's interesting. But that's kind of the extent of my virtual tourism. But
Oh, I think mine is visiting shipyards when they launch massive ships. I mean, they generally are kind of collages or whatever that are on YouTube, but I find it absolutely fascinating, what happens to the water, and watching the ships as well. But it's kind of cool.
I had no idea. And I mean, and no kidding, it is something I'm interested in. And the studio, of course, here is in Canning Town, which before shipbuilding moved up to the northeast at the turn of the 20th century. I think we had something like 800 iron ships built just down the road. So they do these on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can watch things, a whole manner of things like, 10 disastrous airplane takeoffs and, weirdest landing strips. But one of them is, I get Josh might be able to pull it up. But yeah, is ship launches, and it's really incredible. I don't know, maybe that just might be me, obviously, in the same way as sewing.
It does. No, the sewing is very, very, very cool, Robin. I think we've already established that. Josh is the only cool person on this show under the age of 30 at least. So, yes, I think if Josh said the sewing is cool, the sewing is cool. But I find the idea of that fascinating. It's not quite virtual tourism, but maybe it is. I mean, maybe these things are
Yeah.
tourist events now. Certainly, what we do down in the smoke is we blow up tab blocks, and they always get a big audience, don't they?
Yeah.
They do, and there was some very big chimneys that got blown up last year in Derbyshire, I think. I've been to the zoo, I've been to Kew Gardens, and using Josh's tip as well, I would sometimes go to the seaside. It's just really nice to wander around Brighton and see familiar sights and I don't know, be part of everything. I was a bit concerned earlier in the week. Were you talking about sports and things when on Monday it was announced that all the tennis courts, the outdoor tennis courts, were open and that the golf clubs were open and the golf clubs were being flocked to. And you think sometimes I think people have a bit more money than sense.
Yes, I think it's because I mean, as elite swimming coaches, these are challenges that are really facing the surgeoners, isn't it? But it's that sense of once you're out on the course, you're a very long way from anybody. But it's
It's the
things like
clubhouse, isn't it?
yeah, and well, the clubhouses and the toilets and things are closed. But when people talk about car parks being full, it's very hard to see how you can get out of a car easily and avoid somebody who's just getting out at the same time.
Well,
I mean, yeah, I would personally, and even if I wasn't shielding because the government told me to, I would be shielding anyway. And indeed, we started shielding about a week before we were told to, and we will. Because one size can never fit all. You have to look at your local situation, don't you? And,
our PA, one of our PAs came to work yesterday and said, we'll be back in full lockdown very quickly because, he said it's the first day he's come to work since the lifting of the very small lifting. And he said the roads were like motorways. Everyone was out, people being stupid. It's just like, he said it was the change was phenomenal. and he said, people are driving like idiots, and they're the kind of people that will be behaving like them in relation to social distancing and sensible behavior. So we'll end up back in lockdown in 3 weeks anyway.
Well, on that cheerful note, I think we should move on slightly because one of the main themes of this program is there is lots you can do at home to stay creative and stay well. We have a fully comprehensive program on our website, which is www.together2012.org.uk. And for anybody who can't see, Robin was just taking a photograph, or apparently taking a photograph of the screen. So he's being a wonderful tourist. Well done, Robin. It reminds me, I think I flagged this up slightly on Wednesday when I was introducing the poem with which we said goodbye. We have a very active street art group as Together 2012. It brings together individuals who join in our clubs program. Our clubs program is something that we usually deliver in East Ham on a Monday to Friday morning. We cover all sorts of art form: art, music, photography, film, poetry, dance, combined arts, and probably things that I have forgotten. And so we have participants from those. We have participants from our theatre company, Act Up Newham, our associate company. And of course, we saw their dance piece Changes on Wednesday. And then we have performers from a group called Starpad DJs and another group called Powerhouse Women, and they all come together. And a few years ago, we created a street art piece called Alien Tourists, which I think we've now done in Stratford Shopping Centre, Galleons Reach Shopping Centre in Beckton, and the Olympic Park. And we have a party of tourists from outer space, and in outer space, everybody is disabled. So it's very unusual for them to see a non disabled person, so they tend to stare at them a lot. And they're sort of dressed, actually, I think, kind of almost now in a very sort of protective way, because they've got these sort of white paper boiler suits to protect them from the atmosphere, and those have got hoods and things, and then they've got sort of strange things on their heads and so on. But anyway, that's our take on tourism. It's a non-verbal piece, but within the Join In From Home program, you have a link to watch with together. So if you don't feel like actively doing arts and things, there's a whole range of video footage of past performances. There's another very, very funny street art piece they've done called Always Waiting, which is about the endless queuing that you have to do these days, and how at the end of that queue, you just have to start again. The queuing actually doesn't get you anywhere. There are links to highlights from these shows, and there are also a whole range of links to films that have previously been shown in our disability film festivals. So that's the Join In From Home program. We've got a range of things that we would very much like you to do and share with us, but we'd also just like to see artwork that people have done anyway. And we've had a piece sent in from Pritesh Patel. Let me see if I can get it up. So this is Pritesh's painting after the VE Day fly past. And let's just see. Yes, so we can just get a bit more of a close up of that. And Pritesh is dressed in a black zipped hoodie. He has a beard and a moustache, and his picture is a sort of, he's done a sort of blue circular picture with a red V and VE Day on a white background. So thank you very much for that, Pritesh, and keep sending them in.
I like that. I think it's really nice. I like the colours going together as well.
Yes, I loved the VE Day fly past art we had from Steraplergia on Monday. I think it's the blues and the reds, because of course we're certainly seeing a much bluer sky in London than we're used to, and long may that continue.
Is it actually noticeable as well that the lack of smog?
Oh yes,
Definitely. It also is easier to breathe, to be honest, even with the windows shut.
yeah. This studio is only about 100 yards from the A13, and because we've had a lot of redevelopment and planning laws have been very much relaxed centrally, so there's not so much that councils can do. We've had a huge block built opposite, which goes right up to the motorway, which is a 6-lane motorway, but it kind of traps the air and all the sound. So I still wake up about 3 hours early because the noise of the traffic kind of, it's like the block acts as a sort of huge kind of echo chamber.
Oh,
So
golly.
it's not just noisier, it's
Yeah.
also more polluted because the air can't blow down towards the river. But yeah, it's really, really noticeable. It's like the sky, if yeah, if there isn't actually clouds, the sky is blue, whereas we're sort of used to the sky being a kind of murky, kind of yellowy color an awful
Okay.
lot of the time. However, I should say, and that don't get me started. I was not, but I think if you're a disabled or older person, this is a important development. Really, in London, they're planning to make a lot of the streets car free. Now, if you're a wheelchair user or you can't walk very far, or you've got a condition that means you need to shield, but you've still got to go out to get food and stuff. This is not going to be very helpful. There was a study done yesterday that showed the majority of over 55s going to work in London do not use public transport. So they're most of them you have to assume are using cars, and not being able to get to work is by anything other than public transport is really going to put an at-risk group at much higher risk. I mean, I just looked at it and thought, will I ever be able to leave my house again? Because if I can't leave it by car, I can't leave it at all. So yeah, I think it's a bit of a trade-off. I don't really see them closing the roads like the A13. In fact, they won't.
But it's a bit of a contradiction as well, in as much as in terms of what Boris said on Sunday was, don't only use public transport if you really need to because of the social distancing. So they're encouraging
His
using.
plan is that everybody walks or cycles. Now,
Oh,
that
right.
would be lovely if that was practical. And I really, really feel for the families with children with life limiting conditions. Together 2012 does quite a lot of work with younger people with life limiting conditions. They're very, very car dependent because of infection, regardless of coronavirus. And just, the frailty and the logistics of trying to get families around, often with more than one child. The idea that you have to, that you're just thrown into, well, if you can't walk, you just stay at home, seems really miserable when we're the group who've been hardest hit the whole way along. But enough of the politics. Have you been doing any art this week, Julie? That's a loaded question because I know you have. And usually on a Friday morning, we would be doing drawing and painting in our art club. So, what have you been drawing and painting?
Uh, well, I did a couple of sketches of plague doctors, which I thought was good fun. I've got an idea for a picture with a plague doctor. A plague doctor is a sort of medieval outfitted person with a long beak, which they have aromatic herbs in to avoid breathing in plague germs. They have a sort of hat and a head cover, which is very similar to beekeepers, so it's completely enclosing, a long gown, and a stick with which to examine people or keep people away, I think, probably more likely. So I had a lot of fun with that. A friend of mine sent me across a link to a patchwork plague mask pattern, which I thought was good fun, and I thought I might try to do that at some point in cardboard. Um, and also just looking at the dog and trying to get a sense of her visually, and one of the cats.
I noticed when I came in, you were doing colour washes over the paper. I mean, I think for people who've just starting out, I mean, how do you do that kind of technique?
It's a little bit tricky for me at the moment because I don't have a board, and ideally, what I would do is stretch the paper. So I'd put a piece of paper on a board, and then sort of put a bit of masking tape or tape on the sides, and then do the wash and let it dry off, and it stretches that
And
way.
I mean, I will dig around in the studio now. I know you need one and find you a board tomorrow. But when you do the wash, what's the reason for that? And is that with very, very dilute paint?
It can be anything you want it to be. I tend to use dilute paint and then do an overall background and then focus on the things that I've got a picture in my head, so I focus on the areas where I want a bit of color, and then either come in with uh, a bit of watercolor, which is much more concentrated um, on a finer uh, brush, or a pen and ink, or even you can use uh, a drawing pen, an ordinary graphite pen. But it's really just to create a background. I'm not somebody who can see detail very easily. So, sort of like a general color background is quite a nice thing to do. And I've always done it actually since I was a little kid, sort of do a wash and then pick out the details in pen and ink or pencil.
And would you put, for example, would you do a sketch in pencil, then put a colour wash on, and then use the pencil as a guide for paint, or do you paint
No.
freehand on top of the wash?
Well, what I can do is do the wash, let it dry, and then use the pencil to just make some guide marks and bring it out with either um, more concentrated watercolor or pen and ink. I wouldn't put the pencil marks on first. Um, I suppose you could, but it doesn't seem very sensible to me because you just wash over them.
And well, I suppose I was wondering whether how kind of translucent the wash is. I mean, on a Friday morning, we have a drawing and painting club, and it's very much aimed at people individually being able to develop their style. What we provide is the space to do it in and all the materials, so people can choose whether they want to use paper, canvas, what type and color and size of paper. We have acrylic paint, watercolor, pastels, charcoal, drawing pencils, watercolor pencils, and so on. And it's really what we say is an opportunity to find your own voice. But we'd recently introduced a still life, and I think we've picked this up in the program before, that if you don't feel, and lockdown is having that impact on a lot of people, if you want to do something but you don't feel very imaginative, then setting up a simple still life, by which I mean just putting a collection of objects together on a tray or a small table. It can be edible. We were going through a very nice phase where people were bringing in fruit and then eating it afterwards. But make sure you finished your picture first. It can just be any kind of random collection of objects, and that can be a really inspiring way to start. Another tip that we realized in terms of painting, and I think the internet, if you've got access, is always very useful for this, is we were wondering if you didn't have boards, or, well, actually, in fact, we do use boards and so on, but you know how quite often you do a painting and the paper goes very, very wrinkly? And one of the ways we've been getting around that is just using a simple plant mister and just misting the paper first. And
Mm.
if you paint onto paper that's already slightly wet, that can really help with the wrinkling as well, not just pinning it.
I think that's right. I think just what you were talking about still life. I think for me, one of the advantages of doing a wash on the paper is that I don't particularly like um, pictures that are predominantly white with a little bit of painting or a little bit of drawing in the middle of it or on the side. I think you're not making best use of the paper, and I think a lot of people can do that, do it very happily. But for myself, I like to have a bit of a background, and putting a wash on first means that you've got a lot more freedom because you can't put the wash easily on something that's already drawn.
Yeah, that I think that's very interesting. I mean, one of the things that we offer in the Join In from Home program is the opportunity to join in with our International Hands project, which we've developed for digital work. So the Hands project is something we've had going for almost 6 years now. And it's about showing that we're all human and we're all unique. You can't be sort of divided into normal and abnormal and disabled and non disabled and white and everybody else. We're all human and we're all different. So it requires you to just simply draw around your hands. You can do that. I think we sort of, in a very fancy way, do that on light foam, but in fact, you can very easily do it on a cereal packet. Draw around, cut out, turn it over. So, because again, what we found is that if you draw around your hand with something like a felt tip or a pencil and you cut it out, it's not perfect. You're always going to see a little bit of the outline. So if you turn it over, then you've got a complete blank. And then just decorate it with whatever you want. That could be paint, glitter, collage, stickers. You know, we've got some beautiful examples that you'll see on the website already. In usual times, we would ask people to send those in. So we could add them to our real life installation. But given the health risks of that in terms of just going to the post office, we're asking you to send us photos instead. So that's the hands project. I see you're very distracted over in the West Midlands, Robin. Are you looking at something?
I was just I thought Tracy was texting Josh something actually.
No, just checking in with the third production office. So
Yeah,
everything was running
if
smoothly.
you've got somebody monitoring everything else in another room, it would be really difficult because engineering and presenting is quite a challenge already. Um, I don't think you've made any hands for our hands project yet, Surgeoners. So how about that's your week's challenge, and then we can put some nice photos of that up to add to the pictures we already have. Because
Okay.
in all honesty, all of the pictures that are on the website come from when we've run this activity in real life before. We haven't had anybody doing it, especially for the internet and using things like serial packets. So that would be lovely.
Okay, cool.
Another activity that we always like to highlight on a Friday is our Join In From Home music program, because we have a very active live music program in real life, which has, I was thinking, has done all sorts of things over time. When we were asked to set this organisation up, it was back in 2013, and we'd all been involved, actually, including Robin, in running a volunteer led festival for the 2012 Paralympics in the main host borough of Newham, which is where we are based now. And in 2013, the people who'd participated in the workshops and come to see the shows and productions and screenings said to us what they wanted was for us to set up an organisation, keep going, but to not just have projects. What people wanted was something that was long term, because they said to us, you know, we go to something for a few weeks or a few months or even a few years and it stops and everything's lost. So with the music club, what we have is a sort of basic open mic night on the first Friday of each month. At the moment, it's a first Thursday Zoom instead. And if anybody wants to join in, please email us tv@together2012.org.uk. And we will be delighted to welcome you to the music club. But we've had a range of projects as well. One of them, back in 2014-15, was the Recycled Band. And the Recycled Band, we built 12 giant percussion instruments out of building materials and recycled objects and put it into the Olympic Park. We've shown some of those instruments are made of things like old baths and bits of fencing and
Right.
oil cans, all sorts of other things. There's lots of photos on the website. But we've also, with workshops, made smaller instruments. And we've got some of those activities up there on the Join In From Home program. So, somewhere in my visual aid, we have the instructions for making a drum. Oh, yes,
Wow.
just pass them on to my lovely assistant.
Someone had to eat all those chocolates first, though.
Sadly, yes.
Always on
Really taking one
There
for the
is
team.
a drum beater from a wooden spoon, in fact, made specially for this program by my lovely assistant.
Very interesting, just as you pass that over, the decoration. I mean, probably certainly where you are as well. But with the canal networks around Birmingham, there's a huge amount of spoon art. I mean, canal art, but they use wooden spoons and things as a as canvases, as it were.
Now, funny you should say that, because I think it was 2017, we were commissioned by the Canal and River Trust to do a project that built on both the art club and the music club. And it was all around canals and canal art and canals in East London. And you ran a workshop with the Tuesday Art Club, didn't you, to decorate spoons? And we've got some lovely pictures. So, yes, I think in terms of new activities for the website, we'll put that up quite soon. We ended up, our volunteer Cliff Seagree made a fantastic frame that was also edged with rope and set all of the spoons into the frame. And they're currently hanging in a closed building, the St Bart's Centre in East London, which was the new home we moved to in December. And they went up in the cafe and they look fabulous. So I'm sure one day, sooner rather than later, people will be enjoying them again. But that is a really good idea. And I think if I can get the things together that we've done before ready for the website, we'll get some special West Midlands input into that. So, also in our activities for the music club, there is the Make the Shaker. And this is a thing that we just did with recycled water bottles, because we generate an awful lot of recycled water bottles at Together 2012 because we've always had infection control processes. And on the basis that it's not very safe to give out water from one big bottle in reusable cups, we've always used a lot of these little bottles, but we keep them all and then we recycle them for use in workshops. And one of the things that we found, particularly with young people, found really interesting is just learning how different things make different sounds, and just by experimenting with different things in the bottle and how many you have in, the sound is completely different. And yeah, people are often kind of really like experimenting with that. When we were taking the recycled band round, what we had was kind of little building components. So it was kind of, well, you can see how so many nuts and so many raw plugs and different bits and pieces like that all make different noises. But it is fun. And finally, and I've slightly forgotten the name for this, but let me give you the shaker and get the spoon back. And then I shall have to look it up on the web page, or perhaps you could, Josh. But it's one of those things where you hit two things. You've got two notes, two playing surfaces.
Like a djembe where you got different notes to where you hit it.
No, it's the. Is it the agege? No, agejo.
Yes, a go. Go.
It's on the
Where
website.
is
How do
it?
you pronounce
A
that?
go-go.
A go-go. So
Well, I said a go, and it just didn't look right in my head. I was like, no, it's gonna.
So if you go to together2012.org.uk and click on the Join In From Home programme, you will see that the Hands Project is the art club activity and the Making the Instruments is one of the music club activities. Do you have other suggestions for making instruments apart from just the usual sort of take a row of saucepans?
Well, no, I mean, it depends on how long lasting you want them. But I mean, a garden. If you want, we were talking the other day about sound in films as well. But you know, our for those of us that can get outside, first of all, I realise, but there are lots of things in the garden, or in around twigs, leaves, which you can just rub together. For example, you can break, you can do things with them that will make sounds, rub them, one twig on another twig, so you don't, sometimes it's not even the case of needing to create something, it's about the creative use of what you've got. I mean, and then I mean, things that we've done, you can make rainmakers, for example, or the sound of it, which is very similar to what you've done with the water bottles, but generally with rice. If you want heavier rain, you'd put dried peas in. Obviously, the issue with filling bottles is at the moment is if you can't get to the shops, so you've got to make do with what you've got. And then everywhere around things, opening and closing doors in time, and which might be very annoying for your parents if they're or wife or children, whichever it is that you're currently annoying. But actually finding many things around the house make funny noises, and yeah.
Yeah, and then you've got the full-on kitchen pots and pans, haven't you? Where you bang two saucepan lids together, that's the cymbals. You bang on the saucepans, that's your drums. Yeah, put some rice into a bottle. That's your shaker. And please take a photo or preferably a video, send it to us, and we would be delighted to play it on this show. And
Yeah,
then, if the surgeoners feel like having a family orchestra, please
yeah.
don't
No, I think
film it.
kind of what Dad was saying around, anything can be an instrument. Um, if anyone's familiar with the group Stomp, and if you're not, a quick Google search. Um, they make incredible, kind of live productions. Um, yeah, their instruments are, brooms sweeping on the floor, and their feet and clanging different things off other things, and yeah, they can make some kind of, really impressively complex kind of compositions, but with, yeah, literally with random stuff. Um, and
Yeah,
yeah,
we put that link on the website.
Yeah. And I
And
was going to say, oh, just to add to that, sorry, um, is that I did a lot of work 18 months ago, probably now, but with a local group for children labelled as learning disabled called ICANN. Um, and one of the activities I used to do with them, particularly about warming up, was just using their own bodies to create sounds and not just clapping. Not everyone can clap, and if you've only got one hand, it makes it difficult. But there are, for example, but there are lots of other bits of the body that you can use and noises that you can make with your on your body or with your mouth or with it, sorry, just we'll stick with the mouth for now. Um, and, but and different rhythms that you can play out, and you can kind of do call and response. So if there are two of you or more, one of you can make on your body, someone else copies it, or you get a rhythm going, and don't hit yourself too hard. Some fun, some people I realize, you're not able to do that, but a lot of people will be able to.
And you can certainly make mouth noise. I mean, that's something that's, again, with our volunteer Cliff Seagree, has often been really popular at Music Club, where, so yeah, absolutely, one person starts making one note, somebody adds to it. I won't demonstrate now because I see from our schedule that we should be moving on to talk about what there is to do online for the weekend. Julie's desperate to tell us all about Eurovision, but I just wanted to flag up that the BP Portrait Award, which for the very first time has not had BP involved in the judging, is now on virtual display. Is it the National Portrait Gallery, presumably? And they've created, as much as they possibly can, the real experience of going into the National Portrait Gallery. My real experience is that I usually can't get in there because there's no blue badge parking available. So I am particularly looking forward to the virtual exhibition. So that's one of the links that we will put up on the highlights page, which is the link below the page on our website, which says Together 2012 TV. So we'll be putting that one up. Julie, tell us what's happening with Eurovision.
Well, I think there's a pretty full schedule, uh, mostly involving Graham Norton and Rylan. I don't know why. I cannot think. But both of them have been commentating for the Eurovision in the past. The BBC is doing very well for us, I think. On the iPlayer, there's a documentary which actually filmed from January the journey of James Newman, a good name, who was our designated singer for this contest. Um, I didn't really like him very much, but because I don't think he's actually very interesting. But the documentary itself is quite interesting, and I think it's worth watching. But it is on the iPlayer. Tonight on BBC Four, which long may it continue and not be shut down, um, is the the 60th anniversary show of Eurovision that was shown in 2015. It's a lovely show. This I remember it well. It talks about the pioneering songs, the early singers, the program makers, and also I think it shows how the voting process has changed over the years. Um, not always for the best, I would say. But what was nice, there's a quote here. I'm looking at my iPad, and Graham Norton says of Conchita Wurst's 2014 win, the people had spoken, and they were nicer and more tolerant people than their governments let us think. I thought that was wonderful. Um, it continues then after that. It talks about Dana, Dana International, not Dana International, Dana herself, the Irish singer who first won the Eurovision for Ireland. And then Saturday, there's on Radio 2, there's very, very early on programs, but you can if you go to BBC Sound, you can listen to them again. And then from 6:30 on BBC One, there's a story about the British viewers and how they can take part in a live vote. The whole thing kicks off at 8 o'clock, um, and is followed by more Graham Norton at 9 o'clock on BBC Two. That kicks off on BBC One at 8 o'clock, followed by BBC Two with Graham Norton. And Ryland Clark Neal follows him. So we've got and it still goes on. There's all sorts of bits and pieces, but I think one of the things that I'm looking forward to is Radio 2 on Sunday is doing an ABBA party, and I think you have to go a long way to beat a good ABBA party.
Yeah, and I think even if you don't like Eurovision, ABBA is still pretty addictive. I mean, people have been having these Eurovision parties watching old Eurovisions, haven't they? And it's something that's really sort of swept the nation and beyond and raised a lot of money for good causes as well. So I think actually, although yeah, after this Saturday, it's going to be very disappointing for a lot of people who've really been building their whole lockdown around Eurovision and leading up to tomorrow. Did you have anything you wanted to recommend for the weekend in West Midlands?
I've been looking at the so Billboard, the chart company, have a kind of updating page of all of the various music live streams and concerts and things that are going on each day. So I've kind of been checking that. So this weekend on YouTube, Queen on the YouTube channel are replaying the Freddie Mercury tribute concert from 1992. Prince and the Revolution live from 1985 again is on kind of just for this weekend on YouTube. And there is a very long list of various different performances and where to find them and links to all of them on their website. Yeah, it's got everything from Queen to Miley Cyrus, and something called Rainbow Kitten Surprise, which apparently is an indie band because I googled it to find out what exactly a Rainbow Kitten Surprise was, which apparently it's a new indie band. But yeah, no, there's kind of all sorts of genres represented on the list of things that are going on. So we'll send that link out so people can kind of have a look if they're interested.
Okay.
Can,
And
sorry, can I just? I'm so sorry, Robin. Please forgive me, but I really meant to say this, and I completely forgot earlier on. The RHS are doing a virtual Chelsea Flower Show, and I think that's quite important because it's never been virtual before. But obviously, the displays aren't going to be there in the same way. But for those of us who love the flower show, it's well worth checking out the RHS website with the Chelsea Flower Show. Thank you, Robin. I'm sorry to have interrupted you.
no, that's
We'll
fine.
forward
That's
those
fine.
list of links.
Yeah, and that's the
Yeah.
Royal Horticultural Society, isn't it? RHS.
But I think the website is RHS, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. And actually, I thought I'd just throw as obvious a question into Google as what to do in lockdown this weekend, and came up with quite an interesting site, which I think, but it's called stylist.co.uk, and then a massive string at the end of it, which I won't try and tell you, but we'll endeavour to send over, which is a less free than all of these things. Some of it, I mean, but it's got a whole lots of different sets of things. So there is a strong women yoga retreat going on this weekend virtually. I've now signed up already, not to that, to the next thing. Fender have offered 3 months free guitar tuition to the first million subscribers to it. And it's not for big, it's for anybody. You know, you can select your level and choose, and from that point on you get 3 months worth of free lessons. There's Learn to Bake. Now some of these things aren't free and some are. Again, for those of you who are planning a Eurovision party, there's a mixology course, which is music, alcohol rather than music. And just, yeah, I mean, it's just quite an, an interesting site and a little bit different. It's sort of, it's just I recognize, some of them. There is a Airbnb, whilst not being able to offer B&Bs, are offering links to some, a whole host of international activities, but there are sign-on fees. I think there might be some free ones. I saw some that are £1 a person, but then they, there's Learn to Cook Mexican something or other, and it's like 10 quid.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's, I appreciate all the self-employed people out there who are taking their trade online, and quite right too. But the reality is there is so much to do out there that is free that, yeah, start with the free stuff.
Yeah.
Everything we do in real life is free. That's something that was really important to us as artists when we set up Together 2012. So you will never have to pay to come to our events or activities, but of course, sadly, you do have to pay for your internet access.
I think a million more guitar players, a million more learner guitar players could be a little bit straining for some people, though.
But I think it's going to be so welcomed. I mean, you did us a workshop, a masterclass the summer before last, didn't you, as part of our Summer Together program of
Yeah.
developing locally based artists. And it was so popular. And I was really pleased that the majority of people who came were women. We aim to program at least 50% women in our music program, including the artistic program. And it was just really great to be able to do that. So if you've got a guitar out there and you've never learned, the other thing, of course, is there's also lots of YouTube videos with how to. And I think the last time we talked about guitars, we also talked about how cheap it is to buy a ukulele, which, if your hands are maybe not as strong as they used to be, is also easier to play because it's only got 4 strings. So we're nearly at the end of our show because it's Friday. Angry Fish traditionally plays us out. Next week, we've got lots to look forward to. We always touch on the advice and guidance being given out on Monday and look at sources of help, as well as all sorts of arts activities. On Wednesday, of course, we have our Paralympics for the right of the teddy bear to wear the medal. But we also have Virtual Nature Watch with our assistant's dog, Precious Newman, and our virtual writer in residence, Penny Pepper, and her poetry. And of course, you have experienced Friday for yourselves. We always want to hear what you're doing. Do you want to come on the show and talk about your artwork, your company, your project? Let us know. It's tv@together2012.org.uk. But otherwise, I think we'll be saying goodbye from London.
Have a good Eurovision.
And I know what I'm going to be doing this weekend and what music is going to be on throughout the G90 HQ. It's going to be Eurovision and ABBA. So, yes, we may still be singing ABBA on Monday. So, we'll say goodbye and we'll pass over to you, Josh, to say goodbye before we hear from Robin.
Yeah, so it's goodbye from me. Hopefully, you all have a nice weekend. And if you're anything like me and the opposite of Jew and Julie, you'll be actively avoiding anything Eurovision this weekend rather than actively seeking anything Eurovision. Look forward to seeing you all on Monday.
Okay, lockdowners. It's a bit like sundowners, aren't we? But lockdown. Sundown would be a music festival for those of you not aware. So let's try. I'm experimenting a bit here. Going to use my electric guitar, but hopefully I don't doesn't come through too loud. This is the song called One More. There's got when every
Robin, I'm just coming back in the stream to say that your sound is mostly cutting out. Do you think you could have another go? Maybe switch mics?
Okay.
I'm wondering if it's the guitar lead, because we'd all like to hear it. Now we're realising we're part of the lockdown festival. What would a lockdown festival pass look like, I wonder?
I said it was an experiment. Hopefully this will work.
We're still getting a little bit of cutout, and I'm wondering if you've got a loose cable.
Okay, hold on. Give me the thumbs up if that's better. I've turned the speaker off. Okay. Right, let's go again. This is One More. Welcome back to the Lockdown Festival. Like all festivals, technical issues abound. There's got to be a time when everybody smiled. There's got to be a year when terrorists take a break from promoting fear. I've got to believe that there will be a place for my son to grow up safe. You've got to understand that everything you see might not be what it seems to be. There are people in this world who have ideas that shouldn't be heard. Let's live as one. Let's love as one, as though the world has only just begun. Take the hand of a stranger in a crowd. Go kiss the man next door. Don't throw a penny, throw a pound to the homeless family sitting on the ground. Come together, come as you are. Leave the hurting far behind. Hug each other, share a cup of tea. Find you care again and feel the release. Find you care again and feel the release. One more face, one more fight, one more famine, one more plight, one more moment, one more year, one more death, one more tear, One more breakdown, one more wife, one more murder, another wasted life. One more murder, another wasted life. Take the hand of a stranger in a crowd. Go kiss the man next door. Don't throw a penny, throw a pound to the homeless family sitting on the ground. Come together, come as you are. Leave the hurting far behind. Hug each other, share a cup of tea. Find your care again and feel the release. Find your care again and feel the release. Find your care again and feel the release. Thank you and have a great weekend.